Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 Podcast, post Thanksgiving edition. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi, and thank you for joining us once again. And I hope everybody out there had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Um, Unfortunately, we had to watch the Bears lose to the Lions, but something did good came out of that loss, and we'll get to that very, very shortly. And once again, my co-host is the YouTuber, the Windy City Production Channel, very popular among the Bears fans, and has been a regular on my show. Thankfully, it is Rishab Skiri, and Rishab. First of all, thank you. Hope you and your family had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we certainly have at least something to talk about for a change, and that is, of course, the Chicago Bears finally fired Matt Eberflus. And listen, I appreciate the people joining in. Celeste, good afternoon, and happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Levi Garten, thank you for joining me as always. And I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving as well. We're already less than 2 minutes in, and 200 people showing up. And folks, please, get. And our longtime friend Charles is joining us once again from Destination
Hello.
Unknown. Hello, Charles, and peanut butter jelly time. I hope that's what you're having for your lunch this afternoon after indulging himself in the turkey and stuffing and everything. But let's start with the big news. Of course, is the Matt Eberflus finally fired. And listen, I'm going to give the floor to you. You know, you've been openly talking about it on your video as well.
Mm-hmm.
Give me your thoughts on the Matt Eberflus firing, and where were you when you found it, and what were your emotions like?
Yeah, I was at a Wisconsin Badgers game. Actually, I was watching football in Wisconsin, Madison. It was really cold outside, so I was freezing my ass off. Very painful game, but yeah, I found out from you actually. Your text was
Yes.
the one that made me realize what happened because I wasn't checking Twitter obviously at that time. I was watching the game, so I get a text from Steven. What time was it? Like 11:30, 11:45, whatever it was. That
Something like that.
Yeah, he's fired! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! And I checked Twitter. I thought you were kidding at first, but I checked Twitter. Sure enough, everybody's excited about that. That's the only thing anybody is talking about. So, yeah, I was super, super excited. I mean, I thought that there was a good chance it would happen just from the reports we were getting earlier, that week from maybe not like very credible sources, but like, people around Twitter were talking about this potentially happening. And I think the fact that so many, media people, so many other coaches, so many other fan bases were talking about this on Thanksgiving, especially. I think that's what actually enabled this to happen. And also the players' reactions. Like Jalen Johnson was super mad. I'm sure you saw that article written by The Athletic. Some other
Right.
players were completely pissed. I mean, you saw Jaquan Brisker. He was like, God doesn't make mistakes when we fired him. Like the very next second, like that's what his tweet was. I mean, that's how hated he was in the locker room at that point. So I think that's why they made the change. And, obviously all the Bears fans were celebrating it. And you kind of feel bad for him a little bit, maybe a tiny amount, just because, he is a human being. But at the same time, he's getting paid millions of dollars to be a horrible coach. So, like, I don't feel that bad for him either, So,
Yeah, I hear you. And Levi with a question: who do you guys think the Bears should target for head coach this offseason? Levi, be patient with us. We're going to get to that in a little bit as we go along in our show in regards to our coaching candidates and who they should target. JJ and Kwani B should be given a Medal of Honor.
they should be. I think Jaquan
Yes,
or
yes. Obviously,
Jalen
Medal of
Johnson
Honor,
is
only
he.
something that, that Philip Charles could come up with because he's the active Army veteran himself there. But go ahead, Rashad.
No, I was just saying Jalen Johnson might be the reason why he actually ended up getting fired. Because if you saw one of the analysts on TV, Jay Glazer, he was
Jay
talking about
Glazer, he
he
did
was
talk
talking
about
about how Eberflus was giving a speech about, oh, this is gonna be the adversity we need, like some bullshit like that. And then Jalen Johnson interrupted him, started yelling over him, and I think he's the one that kind of started the locker room revolt against him. Which, if that didn't happen, I'm not sure Eberflus would have been fired. So yeah, shout out to Jalen Johnson for having the guts to do something like that. Because I know, you know, yeah, some fans maybe didn't like it, but I feel that the majority of fans were very grateful that Jalen Johnson did that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I think every opportunity that the Bears have, in exposing, Matt Eberflus for who he was. I mean, it's been out there for way, way, way long time, and the Bears just really, needed the opportunity to, any sort of excuse to fire. And Jalen being a team leader himself, who's been with this team for a long time since he was drafted in 2020, and he's only been to a playoff one time in the first year 2020 in the COVID year when they finished 8-8, and from that point on, it's just basically nothing but a shit show with Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus. And it's unfortunate that he has to deal with this nonsense that being a defensive leader that he is. And I totally get it. I think all these years of bad coaching and a lack of accountability and leadership finally caught on. I'm going to play a clip that you shared, Rishab, on your Twitter today. This is from Jay Glazer in the pregame show this morning about Jalen Johnson's eruption. Take a listen.
Back right, Jay Glazer.
Yeah, absolutely, Kurt. Right after the game, it wasn't exactly a Thanksgiving festive, situation over there. Right afterwards, Matt Eberflus started talking to the team, kind of almost washing it over. Hey guys, sorry about this, but this is the type of adversity we need. And immediately, Jalen Johnson, their Pro Bowl cornerback, interrupts him and starts speaking in very colorful language that I usually use off the air over here. And this went on for about 10, 15 minutes. I was told that's the last Eberflus talk. It was Jalen Johnson after that. But at that moment, those players in there, people in the organization knew that's it for Matt Eberflus.
Yeah, they were done with him, and they made it official the next day. So who are some of the candidates to fill in for him?
Funny you should ask, Kurt. Come on, let's get over the wall over here. Let's check it out. And look, I think the number one thing there for them is they're going to need an offensive coach, I think, that could really sit there and teach and mold Caleb Williams over the years. They could develop him. So you look at some of the guys out there like Arthur Smith, what he's doing in Pittsburgh right now. Ben Johnson, obviously, he's the belle of the ball for everybody. And Slowick and Brady have got good quarterbacks, but Cliff Kingsbury has already been with him at USC. And then you got these other coaches also, but you have to sit there and go, man, can these guys develop him? And then, look, we have these defensive coaches. If they want to keep, Thomas Brown, who's in there now, you have some leaders and men over here. The only problem with defensive coaches, if you have success there as a defensive coach, your offensive coordinators will usually get hired as head coaches, so you don't have that consistency that you want for a guy like Caleb Williams. So I look at them and say, we're going to get an offensive coach who can mold him for years to come.
All right. Let's get to the Jalen's blow-ups. Let's thank JJ for what he has done, being a defensive leader and having to deal with all the bullshit that he has dealt with, again with Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus. I totally get it. Let's look at that game in particular. The Thanksgiving game that was the final straw there. The Bears trail 16-0. And look completely like dog crap. And then in the second half, with the score remaining 16-0, the Bears kind of started to, pick up the pace. I think most of it has to do with the fact that the Lions were kind of, shooting themselves in the foot, and most likely they took the foot off the gas as well. And as you were watching that game, Rishab, were you kind of worried that the Bears were, trying to win the ball game? And of course, you have to win ball games, but any wins from this point on means that Matt Eberflus is going to be, saving his own ass or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was rooting for a win only for Caleb and for the rest of the team. So I was disappointed in the moment when the win didn't happen, and we just let the time run out basically. But yeah, very quickly afterwards, I realized this probably means he's gone very, very soon. So I got a lot happier when I realized that fact. And yeah, it's right. Like if we won that game, if Caleb threw a touchdown at the very last second, Flus would have definitely stayed for the rest of the season. I still don't think he would have stayed for next year, but why even give him that opportunity, right? We would have wasted the next 5 games as well. So in hindsight, losing that game was the biggest blessing the Bears could have gotten. Losing the last 3 games, honestly, in the manner in which we did, the fact that we barely lost these games, I think that was even worse than getting blown out, right? If we got blown out against the Lions, for example, part of me thinks that Eberflus might still be here just because, the way in which he lost that game was just so infuriating, right? Like, it just showed, like, the talent is here on this team. So, like, you can't even blame the GM for that. Like, Ryan Poles has assembled a roster, for the most part, besides for the offensive line. But for the most part, he's assembled a roster that's good enough to beat the Lions, Packers, and Vikings. But bad coaching has basically prevented us from beating those teams. So I think the fact that it was so cut and clear, like black and white, that coaching is holding this team back is why he got fired, pretty fast. So yeah, looking back, I mean, thank God we blew that game. And thank God it was a Thanksgiving game too. I think if that was a regular 12 p.m. game today, maybe there would not have been as much pressure on Poles and Warren to actually fire him because, everybody would not have been watching. But then again, the players kind of started this revolt anyways, so maybe he would have been fired. So, you never know. But yeah, Bears fans are lucky it played out in the way in which it did, I will say.
Yeah, that final drive sequence was kind of like the what encapsulates Matt Eberflus' legacy. He was somebody who was unfortunately lacked accountability. That I have been harping for a longest time. Whenever I called into the Bears post game shows on both ESPN and 670 The Score, I've been a regular caller wherever I've been to, and I've never made bones about that. I think everybody can agree to that. The accountability has to be huge, especially in a world that we live in. When it seems as though these days that is severely lacking. Everywhere you look. Business, politics, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's number one thing that I always remember about Matt Eberflus. Somebody who always found the ways to blame, his own shortcomings on other people, as well as not learning from that mistake, because every fucking loss under his tenure, we always heard the same shit. We got to be better. We got to do this and that. Every week, every same loss, we hear the same word salad being recycled over and over and over again, to a point where we got sick and tired of listening, because he doesn't really offer anything that is worth listening to or even trustworthy. So I can only imagine how the players were starting to get fed up with his message, because it doesn't amount to anything. And we can always look back at that Washington game, and I think a lot of the reports we're starting to see, especially the Adam Johns and Diana Rossini piece that came out, I believe, either Friday or yesterday, about the article titled "The Bears Fired Matt Eberflus, but he had lost the locker room a long time ago." And then we can always look back at that Washington game as the turning point, because it's not the Hail Mary that got them into the problem. The problem was that the previous play, where they got 13 yards easily and still had 2 seconds to go, and put them in a better position to do Hail Mary than where they were at the beginning of the drive. And Matt Eberflus saying that didn't matter at all, which pissed off a lot of players, because we know that they had a timeout and Tyreek Stevenson was busy trash talking to the fans, and then turned around and like, holy shit, the plays just had gotten off when he was still waving the flag. You remember that, right?
Oh yeah, that was
egregious. That was egregious.
Oh yeah,
and lacked discipline. So I think it's kind of fitting that I don't know if you paid any attention, Rishab, during the game, where Jamison Williams, the Lions receiver, tossed the ball to his face and got a penalty. Do you remember that play?
Yep, I do. Yep.
Yeah. But here's a kicker. Actually, it was Stevens who actually stuck his foot and tried to trip him up and got pissed off. So it's kind of fitting that a guy like Stevenson, who is in danger of losing his spot with the Bears next year, whoever the head coach is, and the guy who has been such dog shit the last couple of weeks ever since that Hail Mary loss, would be so bad on the field. He was so bad on that first 3 drives where the Lions scored. It was consistently getting beat if you saw the game. The Stevenson getting beat, that is. And then he would do such egregious things off on the sideline where he's lucky that, the tripping didn't, cause any injuries, a brawl, or even a flag, because that is certainly worthy of being thrown a flag. And, Stevenson is kind of the epitome of, just how bad things were behind closed doors, and Matt Eberflus kind of completely lost the locker room itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, all those things you already talked about. Like, there's no discipline on this team, really. That was one thing that his first year in Chicago, that was one thing he was actually kind of good at, because if you guys remember in 2022, the Bears actually ranked very, very low in penalties committed. Like, I think it was like bottom 3 in penalties committed. So the first year, it kind of seemed like his method of coaching was working to some extent. And, we still lost close games that year. And at the time, we thought it was, just because we don't have the roster talent. But then when we got the roster talent the following year, the close losses kept on happening. And 2024, now he ran out of excuses completely. Now there's 0% excuse for having all these close losses again and just blowing games in the worst ways possible every single game. So I mean, eventually players just get sick of it. Like, every coach has to win eventually. You can only say, like, the football talk of like, adversity, is helping us get better, and like all that like stuff only works, at the very beginning. Like, it's not going to work if you're still losing games in year 3. So the Bears had to make this move. The players clearly did not really respect him anymore. I mean, you can tell that by their reactions. I don't think a single player publicly thanked Matt Eberflus for being their head coach, or like said any positive thing about him. Nobody said any positive things. So, I'm sure in private, maybe some Bears players were, appreciative of him. But for the most part, he was one of the worst coaches in Chicago Bears history, had one of the worst records ever, cannot win with any quarterback, really. And he was also the only coach in Bears history to never beat the Packers a single time.
Right, and only coach to be fired mid-season.
Yep,
right? The first time ever. That's how bad it was. I think you and I could maybe agree to a certain extent that I think he is by far the worst head coach in Bears history. And you and I, at least I have seen Matt. We've seen Mark Trestman era, and Trestman actually finished till the very end of the season, despite giving up a consecutive 50-burger, against New England. I think there was a bye, and then against the Packers on Sunday night. And, that should have been, spelled the end of it. But yet somehow he still got to finish until the end of the season before he and then general manager Phil Emery got canned, and rightfully so. But Flus is a terrorist. Well, that we saw plenty of jokes about the Flus being the leader of Al Qaeda, and then the Flus with the Hitler mustache, and then the Hitler killed, memes and GIF all over the field.
Bears Twitter is hilarious.
That's true. But they're harsh. But I think one of the reasons why, the fans, myself included, and you too, perhaps, as to why Matt Eberflus had so much disdain. The fans of all of us grew this much disdain on Matt Eberflus. And I'm sorry to repeat what I said a little bit earlier, is because of the lack of accountability and the leadership that none of which he had to begin with. And I will say this because it's kind of unfair to compare the football life as well as to our regular life in general. But we all know people like that in real life. Maybe way too many of those types of people. Maybe somebody who's a close friend, a colleague, or even a boss. Who skirts accountability and we get screwed by people like that on regular basis. And then those types of people have way too much control or being in a position of power without any sort of consequences. And I know a lot of people who care about it are take accountability very, very seriously. Knows that Matt Eberflus is the kind of person that you see in regular life, and since obviously there's no point in talking about Eberflus, since he's fired, and hopefully this is the last time I ever hear Matt Eberflus's name or even discuss about it. You probably know people like Matt Eberflus in real life, and I think that similarity draws so much hate and disdain towards Matt Eberflus. Where do you sit on the hatred or the disdain that Matt Eberflus gave you all these years?
Yeah, I mean, it was well-deserved hatred. He's one of the most hated Bears coaches I've ever seen, honestly, if you look at, especially this year, like what Bears fans were saying about him. But it's like he's ruined I mean, he didn't ruin Caleb because Caleb is still doing very well this season, but I feel like Justin Fields' development was partially ruined by him, just from him,
The
limiting
hiring of Shane Waldron.
Yeah, the hiring of Shane Waldron.
That was a bad one too.
Yeah, but talking about Fields, like the hiring of Luke Getsy and like limiting all the aggressive throws that he made in the middle of the field. Like he was super hyper about like not having any turnovers, just playing a clean game. Barely passing, down the field, right? Like I think that's one area where the Bears did kind of screw over Justin Fields, even though I think Fields had his own problems. But yeah, I mean, Eberflus, he's a very good tanking coach. If you want to lose games, he will find every way to lose a close game. Like I've honestly never seen anybody this good at losing close games. So it's just like he has losing energy that comes with him. Like he's just not a winner in any sense. Like he just cannot find any ways to win games. And I know he had a good stretch down the stretch of last season, which enabled him to even keep his job for this year. But it was very clear he was going to be fired very soon. I don't think he's ever going to get a head coaching job ever again in the NFL. Even a DC job, I think he will get a DC job probably because, his defense with the Bears was still, okay this year. And, it was dominant in certain stretches. So I'm sure he'll be a DC somewhere, but I don't think any organization is ever going to hire him to be a head coach ever again. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he goes down to the college levels. I'm not sure. But, like, as of right now, I think he's just going to be a DC for the rest of his career in the NFL.
Yeah, even I would think that DC is a little bit out of control, out of the realm, out of question. Excuse me. For me, I think the defense was super bad the last few years. We saw that pathetic soft zone Tampa 2 defense that was consistently beaten against the Minnesota Vikings a week ago or so at this time, and then just the lack of blitz or pass rush pressure just wasn't generating enough. So that was, and the defense, listen, was his meal ticket. And when the defense, completely turns your backs against you, and then the performance just wasn't there, what is the point exactly? So it was so bad, that the press conference against the Lions, where he doubled down and tried to blame it on Caleb, as always, was probably the final straw. And we'll get to the Bears organization side in a little bit as well, but yeah. As his future, maybe I don't think the defensive coordinator job is a bit too much. I know some teams would still think he's a decent defensive coach, but I think DC is a bit rich for teams. Who's looking for a defensive coordinator this offseason. Maybe at this point, linebackers coach, where he got, where he was before, he was with the Dallas Cowboys before he got hired by the Colts, obviously. I think that's his ceiling, to be honest. I think all the stuff that he said and lack of accountability and stuff like that, I think that's just too much. And even I don't think he was that good of a DC when he was with Indianapolis. I think that's what the Colts fans would tell you. And I do kind of believe that too, especially when you play that kind of soft zone defense that doesn't seem to suit in today's NFL where, offense is at a premium and, you give up that many big plays like we've seen in recent weeks, you're cooked. So, all right, enough about Matt Eberflus at this point. I appreciate the fans, people who are watching the stream commenting. So please be patient with the comments that I'm post right there about. And Crooked Commish talking about accountability isn't the same as actually taking about accountability. And that's 100% correct. I think he talks good, but his actions and words really never backed it up. And I think the fans will remember Matt Eberflus as a fraud, fair or not. I think the players think of him as a fraud anyway. And I think we, the fans, will always remember him as a fraud for the rest of our lives. So let's talk about the interim coach now. Thomas Brown, obviously, he takes over with about 5 games left. And I do feel bad for Thomas Brown. I think that if the reports out there saying that the polls wanted to fire Eberflus after the Patriots game, which ironically both of us were there earlier this month, braving the cold and the wind in such a lackluster game, probably one of the worst sporting events I've ever attended in terms of the outcome and the elements that I had to deal with. But listen, 5 games. Do I think it's fair? No, it's unfair, unfortunately. I wish there were a little more sample size to give Thomas Brown enough of opportunity, but yet here we are, Rishab, and let's discuss about Thomas Brown and his and his real chance of getting the Bears job within the next 5 games. What do you want to see from him in the next 5 games to make you say, okay, I would give him a strong shot at becoming, or at least I would give him a serious chance of becoming the next Bears coach?
It's mostly related to the offense and Caleb. If Caleb and the offense keep on scoring good amount of points, like maybe you don't have to be the best offense, like you don't have to be a top 5 offense in football, but the last 3 games, the Bears have had, top 15 offensive performances basically every single week. I mean, we scored, 27 against the Vikings, 19 against the Packers, even though 19 is not that much, but we had 400 yards of offense in that game. Against the Lions, we had good amount of offense in the second half only. The first half was bad, but I just if Caleb keeps on getting better and better in this offense, if the teams keeps on scoring points, if we're competitive, I don't need to see us win every single game, but I think we do have to win some games here too. Like if we beat 49ers, I think should be a winnable opponent with how bad the Niners have been this year. I think we definitely have a chance to beat the Niners. So if he can get that win and then, maybe a win against the Vikings is possible. We play them super close. Maybe a win against the Packers and Lambeau. I mean, that's going to be tough, obviously. But if he wins any of these games unexpectedly and the offense looks good, then I think I would want to see him as being head coach of the Bears next year because, this guy is not any average interim coach, right? He has a lot of experience with Sean McVay. He helped coach a Super Bowl level team with Sean McVay. Sean McVay has so many good things to say about him. I mean, he was kind of his right-hand man some of those years, right? So I think that his experience with Sean McVay and his experience calling plays now with the Chicago Bears and working with Caleb is going to be pretty big for him. And I know it's only 5 games, but I would also count the last 3 games towards his sample size. So it's basically half of a season of sample size that we're going to be getting. And it's during the toughest part of the Bears schedule too. None of these games are easy wins. This is not,
and they won't be favored either too. So
this is not the Jaguars or the Panthers or some bad team. We're getting these good offensive performances again. So I think if he does do well down the stretch, you have to seriously interview him and potentially give him the job, right? Because it would just be so nice to not have to start over completely for Caleb. Because if we have a new head coach next season, he would have had 3 head coaches in less than a season, right? In season and a half. So It would be preferable to keep the same system, the same OC, but he needs to win some games here and have the offense keep on doing well.
Yeah, I agree. And, Crooked Commission says win these next game in convincing fashion and Williams continue to grow is the only way I'm even thinking about seriously considering Brown as head coach. And that's understandable. The Raiders made, I think, a similar mistake with naming Antonio Pierce as their head coach. After, Pierce was named interim for, after the Raiders fired Josh McDaniels. Ironically, after, the Raiders lost to the Bears, I think McDaniels was fired and, Pierce took over. And Pierce kind of, surprised people, if you remember last Christmas, when the Chiefs were beaten by the Raiders badly in Kansas City. And we talked about if the Chiefs are, in danger of, the playoffs and so forth, if you remember that game. So,
yep.
Yes, there is a legitimate, concerns of naming an interim coach and making him a full-time coach. And there's also the argument that, Brown was part of the Eberflus staff, and, I don't think people are too wild about the idea of hiring somebody within the, Matt Eberflus's coaching staff to lead this franchise. But again, the noticeable difference he made in Caleb, the way he has played the last 3 games, where understandably, the first half the Bears looks very, very bad against the Lions, but I do give credit for them coming back strong in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. This after playing again, playing Minnesota into overtime and then having to play, again in 4 days. It's not an easy task. Okay, I'm not trying to make excuses for the Bears because at this point they don't really deserve any benefit of the doubt from us. But for the Bears to at least put up a decent fight, and again, offense looking awfully strong, in the fourth quarter with Caleb throwing 3 touchdowns in the second half. I do believe that Brown has at least proven that he has something going for him. And now as a head coach, he has to oversee the special teams and defense, 2 of which that has contributed to a Bears loss, unfortunately, with the field goal getting blocked and then the defense looking like complete trash, unable to stop anybody or put pressure. So now he has to look at the entire unit. Can he do it? I think so. But, anybody wondering, if he's too overwhelmed to do this job because he was doing so well from calling plays upstairs. Listen, every coach is a crapshoot, whether you hire somebody else, the first time or even an experienced coaches. Okay.
Yeah, Ben Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to Ben Johnson in a little bit. So be patient with us, folks. A guy like Brown, he has waited for this moment. He paid his dues. There's no question about that. And this is a big opportunity. And I'll guarantee you this. If you can't cut it into 5 games, period, even in 5 games, then you cannot cut it, or at least you're not ready, to be an NFL coach. And if you're not ready now, when are you going to be ready? Right? So I think this is an opportunity for Brown. He's going to run with it. I don't know if he will get the job, but I have a strong feeling, Rishab, that he will make a compelling case to be at least to be maybe a top 3 candidate for the Bears job, in my opinion. Am I crazy, or do you see any legitimacy in that?
I think he'll definitely be a top 3 candidate. I think, unless the Bears lose all these remaining games and the bad, we don't know what he's like as a head coach. So he's going to be in charge of the challenges now, right? So I wonder if the challenges are still going to be poorly thrown by the Bears, or the in-game adjustments and all that. I'm very curious to see how he's going to do, because it is a very tough task going up to being head coach now after just being passing game coordinator only a few weeks ago. So, there's a chance that maybe he's not ready for it at all. And it's going to be very clear if he's not ready for it, because we have very tough teams we're playing up against, very tough coaches we're coaching against. So we'll see if he's going to be outclassed by like a Matt Eberflus, or by
or even Kyle Shanahan, where he goes up against. next Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers on the road. Yes.
Yeah. So
And
if
then you have Kevin O'Connell too against the Vikings the following following the San Francisco game on Monday night. So that's a
then
good
Dan Campbell after that too. So if he gets completely outshined by these coaches, then I think there's no chance we should keep him. But I'm thinking the Bears will still be competitive down the stretch. Hopefully the defense is still good. I think Eric Washington could probably do a decent job with them. I don't expect the defense to be elite or anything, but if it's like top 15 level, I think the Bears should have a chance to win some games. And I think the new energy also is just going to help us maybe win a few games, because every time a coach gets fired in season, the interim head coach almost always wins the next game. It's like the new energy always just propels a team to victory most times.
Absolutely. And Thomas Brown effect on Caleb Williams as well noted. So I'm very curious to see, what he has, what kind of an impact or an effect he has on the entire team, including defense and special teams. Again, the two unit that has been much maligned recently and has contributed to this loss during the 6-game losing streak. So for me, final word on Thomas Brown. If he goes 3-2 and beat, Packers or even Lions or even, the Vikings during that stretch, I think you make a compelling case for him to be the, again, the top 3, top 2 coach candidate for the Bears. And I'm very, very excited. You have plenty of time to, kind of gather things, and then take leadership with the Thanksgiving game. At least you have time to prepare yourself. So, this is a big challenge for Thomas Brown, and I do believe that it's a challenge that Brown relishes, and I'm really excited about, what he can do for the entire team, much like he did with Caleb Williams moving forward. Now, the question here is from Zach, which I will kind of tie into our next discussion. Poles should be fired. He sucks. He didn't even interview Jaden Daniels, who should have been drafted number 1 overall. Poles has failed to hire a coaching staff or build a winning roster 3 straight seasons. And it's a good question. And it's a legitimate one that we should be asking about regarding the future of Poles. I'm about to kind of share a screen of, somebody who I think you and I are familiar with, or at least if you are a Bears fan, you should be following this gentleman right here. This is what he was sharing in regard to the Ian Rappaport's report this morning. Take a listen.
Yeah, and no doubt, Rich, the defending of that situation certainly played a part in Matt Eberflus becoming the first Bears coach in franchise history to be fired midseason. So here is where they stand. Thomas Brown, former offensive coordinator, now becomes the interim head coach. He, of course, will get a look at some point about being the permanent coach. Ryan Poles expected to stay as GM and help Kevin Warren run the search for what should be a really coveted opening. I expect them to look at all the top candidates for Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and Mike Vrabel. But here's an interesting name to watch. Cliff Kingsbury, of course, worked with Caleb Williams at USC, now thriving as OC with the Commanders, certainly one to keep an eye on. Here's another interesting note from a team who played just a couple days ago. The Kansas City Chiefs are expected to get Hollywood Brown back up.
All right. So obviously the takeaway from that thing is, the coaching candidates, which we will discuss in detail to kind of close out our show. But, Ian Rappaport was saying something about, Kevin Warren will inject himself, and that it sounded like, though, that actually it is Kevin Warren making that decision on the next coaching hiring, but which kind of freaked out a lot of people. But here, Sears Towers said, while Ian said Ryan is expected to help Warren run the search, I believe this was just a rhetorical error by him. I was told that this coaching hire will be Ryan and Warren working side by side. Much of the process will be via Ryan, with Warren vetting and verifying each step. This will be totally revamped process than what the Bears used to hire Eberflus and Waldron. And I'm going to also verify, another. Let's see. Just 1 second here. Somebody that is more familiar with the Bears fans here. Jeff Hughes, the Bears blog. For those asking about Ryan Poles, I'm told he is decidedly safe. He is picking the next coach. So I think, maybe there was a bit of a misunderstanding about, the fans were kind of worried that Kevin Warren is the guy that, making the coaching hire next or so. But Art Vandelay, Kevin Warren needs to speak. We need things outlined for us. This is new territory. Not fair to the fans to sit on this. And I do believe that Art, and thank you for your question. I do believe that because of the Eberflus firing and the impact that this had on this organization, as well as the whole process of firing him. I think definitely Warren and Poles, or at least Poles, will be speaking on this matter because he's the one who hired Eberflus, and they were lockstep together. He is responsible for bringing Eberflus back for this year, and obviously now he decided that he wanted to, keep a distance from himself from Eberflus, and understandably so. But listen, Rishab, regarding the job Poles has done, and what you saw there with the Ian Rappaport report, and then the Sears Tower and Jeff Hughes's tweet there. Where are you right now on Ryan Poles, and do you feel that he deserves another shot at hiring his own head coach? Super so you will.
Yeah, I'm higher on him now than I was a couple of weeks ago. I remember you asked me this question right after the Patriots game, I believe, or right after the Cardinals game, and
Yeah,
I was definitely souring on Ryan Poles because I just thought he didn't have the balls to actually fire a coach in season, or to convince the McCaskies to fire a coach in season. But the fact that he did do so, I'll give him a little bit of credit for that, even though he was the reason why Flus came back in the first place. So, I shouldn't give too much credit for that. But the fact that he did at least cut ties in the middle of the season and fully realize that, yeah, he completely messed up bringing him back, I think is a good sign. And, Ryan Poles, I feel like he is, for the most part, he does learn from his mistakes. Like he's, gotten better as a GM, again, for the most part over the past couple of years. And I think his process this time is going to be a lot better. He has, Kevin Warren, I guess, to rely on as well for advice. And I truly do believe like he's going to go after the best, probably offensive mind to help Caleb because, again, he came from Kansas City where he saw that Andy Reid helped Patrick Mahomes become a superstar and have a dynasty. And in this league, for the most part, you can only have sustained success with an offensive-minded head coach, besides for Bill Belichick, obviously. But Bill Belichick, had Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels forever, right? So I do think he's going to get the hire right this time. Maybe that's just me being a little bit too optimistic, but I do feel like a lot of good candidates are going to want to come to the Chicago Bears to coach Caleb Williams. I mean, Ben Johnson, for example, he didn't accept a job last year because, he wanted to get a better job elsewhere. And I think that better job could be with the Chicago Bears to coach Caleb Williams. I mean, he could be Caleb's coach for 10, 15 years, maybe win a Super Bowl. Doesn't have to move his family too far either. So, yeah, I think we should be maybe a little bit more optimistic this time, but I also understand why Bears fans are kind of, sketched out because we've gotten the hire wrong so many times over and over again, and we're always like, oh, eventually the Bears are going to hire the right person, but it never really happens. So, we're going to have to wait and see, but I'm liking the fact that they fired the coach in season, right? Because now the next 5 weeks, we can get the process started on, finding candidates to interview. We can't talk to them yet, obviously. I mean, besides like Mike Vrabel, we can talk to. Bill Belichick, we could talk to if we wanted to. Guys that are not employed, we can talk to for sure. But at least like outlining, who they want to talk to, what questions they want to ask, getting the input of the players, all that can be started right now. And obviously Thomas Brown's going to play into that too. Like we're going to have to see what he does as well. But I do think it's just much better this time around because we have that time now to, truly do a deep search.
Yeah. By the way, we've gone 1,000 plus viewers. I think this is a pretty strong record that we've never had. Oh, obviously, people watching from your timeline obviously is certainly dominating. But thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on a very important time and a very frustrating one. And one of the reasons why it was so frustrating, and as a Bears fan, they did the right thing in firing Matt Eberflus. There's no question about that. The way they fired is what I think is going to be a real problem. They made him do the 2-minute presser, a regular presser Friday morning, where he sounded very, very tired and dejected, which kind of like a precursor to what was about to happen, or at least he knew what was going to happen. And the Bears fired him 2 hours later after that Zoom press conference, and people were so up in arms all over the radio on that day, the day it was fired. It was supposed to be a celebratory kind of firing, and they finally did the right thing. There's no question about that. Yet the impression that many people will have is that the Bears flubbed that whole situation. Why they could not have made that damn decision well before that 9 a.m. And so what if they postpone the Zoom presser, like if it was going to raise further suspicion that Matt Eberflus was going to be in trouble, so fucking what? I think there's this weird predomination or perception within the Bears organization that they're preoccupied with something else, in my opinion. And I think there were people who are actually questioning this, and as far as they would go and say, if you can't fire the coach properly, what makes you think you are going to be able to trust this organization to hire the right one? Is that a legitimate, valid point in your opinion about, how they handle this, firing, or are we making too much of a nonsense in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate point. It just doesn't make any sense why they can't do things the right way. It was so obvious you could just say the press conference has been delayed. And like you mentioned, like if people thought that meant the firing was imminent, who cares? Like what competitive advantage would that give away? None, obviously. So yeah, like I don't know. This organization, even when they do the right thing, they still insist on doing it the wrong way, like the hard way sometimes. So
Yeah,
that was pretty annoying, but I'm also not going to worry about it too much now at this point, because at least they made the right decision and like he's gone out of the building. That was the only thing I cared about. So
yeah, and hopefully they will learn from this mistake. And obviously, some people will try to excuse the Bears as if they've never done this before, and so they fucked it up. Understandable, but on the context of things or on the surface, it might not be a good look for an organization that is looking for a new head coach. And maybe if you're a new head coach in Canada, you're like, oh, is that how you treat coaches? I'd be hesitant, and that's understandable. But there's only like one of 32 jobs, and there will be a lot of people who will kill to have this opportunity. There's no question about that. Which leads me to the final segment about what everybody wanted to talk about, the coaches. Sears Tower says that the Bears are looking for a leader of men, which obviously that was posted by Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports. By the way, thank you very much for that link there, Art. The CBS Sports says they're looking for a leader of men. Sears Towers has said that finding a leader of men. I'm told that the Bears front office wants a head coach that can bring together an entire team. They're sick of the buzzword culture. They want winners, and they don't care how the coach gets them there anymore. There is no better culture than a winning culture, 100%. They're explicitly looking for a coach that will do whatever he needs to do to win. Someone who is willing to change himself or his core belief if it means more wins. They don't want principles. They want wins. This is a huge sense of urgency within the Bears front office right now. And also, Sears Towers also go on and mention that Caleb Williams is expected to be heavily involved in this process. And cynics would say, I would rather trust Caleb's instinct than the buffoons, Ryan Poles, George McCaskey, and now Ryan Pace in this matter as well. Here it is. I'm told that the Bears plan to use Caleb as a soundboard for their offseason plans. This isn't just an attempt to make sure that Caleb's needs are being met, but to instill faith in their franchise QB that they have his best interest in him. Okay? So, as Jay Glazer was mentioning earlier, we talked about, it's basically it's smart to hire an offensive coach, because defensive coordinators, when they hire an offensive coordinator and he suddenly becomes a legitimate head coaching candidate and he leaves, they have a hard time attracting or hiring the right one the next time. So we know other than Thomas Brown, the usual suspects of the coaching candidates are, Ben Johnson of the Lions. He had a phenomenal game against the Bears, with the play calling, although the offense kind of stagnated in the second half against the Bears in Thanksgiving. Every fan out there probably saw it and then probably drew the idea of Ben Johnson combined with Caleb Williams. There's also, help me out here, Rishab, Joe Brady with the Buffalo Bills, who kind of had a nice recovery after being fired from the Carolina OC job. Let's see, who else?
I posted a list of all of them actually on my Twitter account, so let me read some of them. But
okay.
Yeah, so I basically somebody wrote an article. I think Peter Schrager, somebody wrote an article about some of the top head coaching candidates this year. So yeah, Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, you talked about. Liam Cohen, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator, he could be a potential one too. Buccaneers are having pretty good success on offense. Cliff Kingsbury is one too, which we talked about. Todd Monken is one as well, the Ravens offensive coordinator. Lamar Jackson won MVP last year under him, and he's having a pretty good season again. Drew Petzing, Cardinals offensive coordinator, potentially. If you want some defensive guys, Jesse Minter from the Chargers, working with Jim Harbaugh. Brian Flores, obviously with the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Glenn with the Lions. Some people also think Vance Joseph could be one too, although I don't think he would be a very inspiring hire. He's already
been somehow Jay Glazer pumped them up in that list of candidates there earlier. So we're looking at the odds here from Bovada. Ben Johnson to 250, Joe Brady 425, Thomas Brown 700. I don't know if they know about, if they have any insights more than we all do. But Liam Cohen, you mentioned, who also interviewed with the Bears OC job, by the way. Aaron Glenn, the DC with the Lions. We saw him very close firsthand, along with Ben Johnson, the game. Cliff Kingsbury's name was also brought up there. It would be hard for me to imagine Kingsbury getting hired, as a head coach when you pass them on as an OC. And it would be weird. I also would not even consider Lincoln Riley as a serious head coach, even though it seems as though, Caleb Williams is more closer to Lincoln Riley than Cliff Kingsbury. And then he happened to be at USC yesterday, to walk out with the players, when the USC welcomed the Notre Dame Fighting Irish out in Los Angeles, and his number was also retired. So outside of Ben Johnson and even Thomas Brown, those are obviously top two candidates. Who else is your top candidate out there that you seriously would consider? Maybe not an offensive guy, but who else do you have on your candidate there?
Yeah, Mike Vrabel. I think if we're going after any defensive guy, Mike Vrabel would be probably the only one I want to go after, because he's a proven head coach, right? Like, he got to the AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill, and he's had some lesser rosters in the past, and he's gotten so much out of those rosters, and it seems like he holds players very accountable. I mean, he was reportedly not high on Nate Davis. Like, he did not like Nate Davis, and he ended up being right about that. I mean, Nate Davis's work ethic clearly was not the best, and Vrabel knew that. Like, he can spot the players that are hard workers, the players that are not hard workers. The only problem with him is that, offensively, it's tough to find the best OCs, if you are a defensive mind. And the last couple of years after Arthur Smith left, it wasn't good on offense for Mike Vrabel. So, that's a valid concern, for Bears fans. The fact that, is he going to be able to find the right OC? That's a fair question mark. But I think he would probably be my main candidate besides for Ben Johnson. Some people mention Bill Belichick, and I don't think that's not going to happen, guys. I mean, he would need roster control as well. I know he says that, or there's reports that, oh, he'd be okay with taking a lesser role now only as head coach, but Bill Belichick has never operated that way. Like, he needs full roster control, and he's going to want to have a heavy hand in the draft, and there's no chance Ryan Poles would give up control of the roster to Bill Belichick, even though Bill Belichick is a fantastic head coach. And, Bill also has not had much success post Brady, right? Like, his offenses post Brady for the most part were horrible. And like, I just don't know if he can relate to a young quarterback anymore. I mean, Tom Brady, he was with him for so long and grew with him, but I don't know if he has it in him to mentor a young quarterback at this point. He's also like 72, 73 already. So he would only be a head coach for what, 3-4 more years, God willing, with the health. So, I know he's a good defensive mind, but I just don't think Bill Belichick is even possibly an option. And then, besides that, it's just like there's not too many. Somebody mentioned Marcus Freeman in the chat. Mr. Wind mentioned Marcus Freeman. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I know he's a fantastic motivator. It seems like the players truly fight for him and love him, but I don't want to risk it with a college coach right now. Like, you need somebody with proven NFL experience. And I just don't know if he's going to work out in Chicago. Like, I don't even know like what coordinators and offensive and defensive coordinators he would hire, because he's never worked in the NFL before. So like, what would his staff even?
He was actually a practice squad player with the Bears before his before he went into coaching. He never played in the NFL. He was a practice squad player on the Bears. So it was just a little bit of clarification there. But go ahead on the Marcus Freeman.
For sure, yeah. I was just saying, like, as a coach, though, I believe he's never coached in the NFL, right? He's only coached.
I don't think so. Yeah, he was let's see, maybe a linebackers coach and defensive coordinator of sorts with Notre Dame, I believe. I'm sorry, Ohio State before.
Yeah, and then like Dan Lanning too for the Oregon Ducks is a potential possibility. He's very good with energy and like just hyping.
I just don't think he's ready to.
Yeah, I don't think. Oregon, why would he leave Oregon? Like, he's already having so much success at Oregon. So yeah, it's the list is not long, honestly, which makes me a little bit scared. Like, I feel like in prior years there were more top candidates available. Like for example, last year, like if we hired Jim Harbaugh, like that would have been perfect. But clearly the Bears want a head coach that doesn't want roster control. That's probably the reason why they did not hire Jim Harbaugh. And they want one that, maybe is not going to talk back to them too much. But that's another reason why I don't think Mike Vrabel is going to be hired, because Mike Vrabel reportedly has intimidated people in the past. Like, that's why I guess he wasn't hired last year, because like some owners and general managers just like feel like he's too power hungry. So I don't know. Like, the way the McCaskies are, I don't think it's going to be a Vrabel or a Bill Belichick or any of those types. But, hopefully it could still be a Ben Johnson.
Our friend, Robert Smits, who we met at the New England Patriots game, was kind enough to meet us. Robert Schmitz has been kind of anti-Vrabel, as you can see here, Rishab. Vrabel, to me, feels like a franchise trying not to screw up the hire and therefore screwing up the hire. The only consistent rubric to winning Super Bowl is to have the best QB and build him to shine. I don't trust Vrabel to do that like I would with an offensive mind. Do you have any rebuttal as to, does Vrabel, scare you other than the fact that his character, or do you feel like, it's kind of being overblown?
Yeah, he does have a point with not trying to screw up the hire. Like, it would definitely be the safest hire, because Vrabel has a very high floor. Like, at the very worst, you're going to be a playoff team every single year, probably, with Caleb Williams. So the floor
ended up falling short, right?
Yeah, floor is pretty high, but the ceiling maybe is not as high. Like, I still personally believe Vrabel could win a Super Bowl with the right quarterback. I mean, he had Ryan Tannehill. Like, Ryan Tannehill is obviously not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. If he had a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, I feel like he could have won a Super Bowl. But he does have a good point, though, that these defensive minds, their ceiling is often not as high as the top offensive minds, because the top offensive minds, they can stay there forever, with their young quarterback, really help them develop in the system. And, they're, just more adept at getting offensive production out of their quarterbacks usually. So, I also agree with him that I want the offensive mind, at the top of my list. But if it's not possible, then I also would not be mad at Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, I think Brable, what the question is now, after Ohio State losing to Michigan again for the
Yeah.
fourth straight year, do the Ohio State and the alumni decided that they want to start over, fire Ryan Day and then bring in Mike Brable, who was a linebacker at Ohio State. So it would be very, very interesting. It would be Brable wanting to either stay in the NFL, which I think he has stated in the past that he likes to, probably he doesn't like college coaching because of recruiting, or he decides that he wants to remain in the NFL and find a decent organization. Again, with him, you have to find a competent OC. He did hire Matt LaFleur, and he also had Arthur Smith in those two consecutive tenures. So I think maybe not being able to hire a quality candidate would be somewhat of an overwhelming proposition. But again, it would be very, very interesting to see. And at this time of the year, you're going to hear so many noises about the Bears coaching candidates, like we've been hearing, and people are kind of like in a frantic mode about, Kevin Warren trying to, maybe strip Ryan Poles' responsibility, and he's the one who's going to be calling the shots now and stuff like that. But same with the coaching staff. These informations are more than likely being leaked by agents. And, you have insiders like Glazer, Jordan Schultz, Albert Breer, Adam Schefter, and Ian Rappaports of the world leaking those informations. And then you have people like, unknown people like Sears Tower, who have been fairly on the record. He actually correctly predicted that Daniel Jones signing with the Vikings 24 hours before anybody broke the damn news. So there is a certain validity to the information out there, but I would try and not get freaked over about the candidates that are being leaked out at this time of the year. Just wait until we get to the end of the season and how Thomas Brown does his job. And then one thing that I had kind of feel a little more optimistic at this time, and then you could too feel optimistic as well, is that the Bears finally moved on from Matt Eberflus. Many pessimistically said they're not going to do the damn thing, right? But they finally did it, even if the press conference just before he was fired was completely unnecessary and was stupid. We talked that into detail, but the Bears finally did it. Okay, they finally decided to move on from Eberflus before he causes more irreparable damage inside the organization. So I do feel a little more optimistic about maybe the Bears are finally serious about getting the right coach. And once again, I'll just finish our show on this one, with the Sears Tower. Sources inside Hallis Hall just now. They're ready to break the bank for the right coach, which
Nice.
I would assume, hopefully, it will be Ben Johnson, because he's certainly coveted, and Johnson is in a rare position of he can choose to, pick which team he wants to join at this point. So, do you feel the same? Do you share the same sentiment that the Bears made the right choice and maybe they're finally changing, or do you still feel like I'm not there yet and I feel like Bears are going to find a way to blow this one again?
I think the Bears might finally be changing. I mean, I know people don't really like Kevin Warren right now because he's not really done anything with the stadium so
I
far.
understand,
But I think hiring Kevin Warren in the first place, who was a football guy somewhat before that, like he worked with the Vikings, helped make some good decisions there. So I think the fact that they hired him in the first place and replaced Ted Phillips was a big step in the right direction. And the fact that they fired a coach in season, like it tells me that things are changing at least a little bit, right now. And if they are indeed ready to spend on the right coach, I think things are 100% changing, right? Like I think they also realize that if they finally get the coaching right, the Bears are going to be good for a long, long time. Like they don't even have to do anything after that. Like if they just get the head coach right, quarterback right, GM, hopefully Ryan Poles is the right guy. They won't have to touch the Bears for 10, 15 years. Like they won't have to worry about anything. They would only have to worry about the stadium, which,
Right.
eventually, hopefully will get done. But like the fan base is not going to come up them whatsoever if they finally get the coaching right. So I think that's
Exactly.
why they're willing to spend as much money as possible, hopefully to get the right guy.
Right, and if the Bears hit this one, and during that time, you mentioned 15 years. During that time, and I hate to sound like a real bad person for saying this, but I'll say it anyway. The McCaskies may not even be in control of this organization because Virginia McCaskey is probably dead at that point. 15 years or maybe next month, who knows? She's already 100 years old, I believe, or 101. She's lived a good life, but time is of essence, and maybe they're just running out right now. And then George is probably ready to get out of the business himself anyway at this point, rather than having to have a deal with a headache of inheritance tax or stuff like that. But we'll talk when that time finally comes. But exactly, I think you nailed on the head. You have a right quarterback, right coach, and right GM. Everything isn't set in stone, just like the Patriots was, during their heyday under Bill Belichick. So we shall see what happens moving forward. And I'm also have a renewed excitement as to how the Bears are going to play now under Thomas Brown with the next 5 games. Although I wish it was maybe at least maybe 7 or 8 more games, because I certainly feel strongly that he has a positive impact on the entire organization. So let's kind of wrap it up with a couple of questions I kind of missed earlier. Art Garcia, what do you guys think of Darnell Wright's play so far this year? What do you think so far?
It's been good the last couple of games. Like I think after he got healthy, it's been fairly good. He's not elite or anything. Like he still struggles to some extent. Against certain elite pass rushers, but I think it's been pretty good. Like I think you can definitely keep him for the next hopefully another contract after that too.
Yeah, I feel good about Darnell Wright. I think there is a bit of a idea that maybe he had been playing hurt. I think a lot of people have been tweeting that for quite some time, and I wouldn't be shocked if we hear something about Darnell playing with torn ACL or like a broken rib or whatever. So Darnell certainly has to finish strong moving forward at this point, and Darnell can make a strong case for his case to be the long-term fixture on that offensive line, which certainly needs a lot of help. So let's everybody waiting for this lady to pass away. Unfortunately, I think that's where we are right now. Anyway, and speaking of the offensive line, I'm going to close this out with Nicholas Selby. Which guards in the draft you're high on? By the way, I'm glad you brought this up, Nicholas. 2 days from today, December 3rd, I believe 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, I will have Jacob Infante, who is the Bears draft analyst. He writes for the Windy City Gridiron.com, and you could also follow him at Jacob Infante. This upcoming Tuesday, I'm going to have him to discuss in detail about the Bears and their Bears draft. You could follow Jacob, and he does his on mock draft and kind of get an idea just what the Bears need to do. Obviously, it's not just a guard, but I think you might have to consider getting maybe 2 guards, a center, and then not just on the offensive line, Rishab, but I would argue that maybe the Bears might have to focus on both sides of the trenches.
Yeah, defensive line too needs some help. I mean, we saw in the last game against both the Lions and the Vikings, we weren't getting enough pass rush, right? Like we need at least one more superstar, I feel like, on this pass rush. So yeah, I think honestly, the entire draft should only be offensive and defensive line. I can't even think of another position we need. Maybe receiver number 3. If Keenan Allen
maybe a safety.
Safety, yeah. Jaquan Brisker misses a lot of time, but besides that, there aren't even that many holes on the roster. Maybe get another running back, but yeah, that's about it. I would say definitely in the trenches we have to address next draft.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this live stream. 1,200 plus people, very, very strong. I think we may have set a record, but mostly thanks to you, Rishab, for your follow us followers, joining us on this Sunday afternoon, where at least we don't have to watch the Bears play, and then we can watch the other teams play, and feel at ease right now. This upcoming draft, we should go for an O-line and DT in the front for Caleb. Absolutely, Mr. Wind. We discussed that in detail. And by the way, I hope you have a chance to join us this upcoming Tuesday again. 9/8 Central, I will have Jacob Infante, the Bears draft expert, to discuss in detail about the Bears draft as well. And in a few hours, in 2 hours or so, I'll do my regular live stream with my friend, co-host, Kevin Fang from Awful Announcing in about 2 hours or so. And have a good Sunday, guys, as always, from Celeste. And likewise to you as well. Rishab, thank you very much for joining me once again, and hope that we get to talk before or maybe after the 49ers game to discuss, about the game, and if we notice any significant changes with Thomas Brown in charge of the head coaching. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday, Rishab. Thank you, and I look forward to having you on in the very near future. And also thank you for everybody who participated and watched this stream. We hope to see you on our regular stream in a couple of hours, and also my scheduled live stream with Jacob Infante this Tuesday night. Enjoy your Sunday, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.